The following is a program of the Santa Barbara County Education Office. To learn more, visit sbceo.org.
Hi, I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools, and I am so delighted to introduce our guest today, Joyce Donaldson, who's the President and CEO of the Carpinteria Valley Chamber of Commerce. Joyce, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
I cannot wait to have you share about the Chamber of Commerce and Carpinteria and some of the incredible work that you're doing with the support of many. But really one of the purposes of this show not only is to talk about CARP and the work that you do, is really to talk about you and learn about the individual behind the leader. So with that, absolutely, with that, let's start then at the beginning of where you were born and raised and brought up.
Wonderful. Well, I was born and raised in Michigan, just outside of Detroit, in a beautiful suburb. Lots of orchards and parks and water. It was just very beautiful. So I lived there, grew up within a 5-mile radius, lived there my whole life before I decided to take the plunge and move to sunny California 11 years ago.
Wow, and what brought you to California?
My children. So after both of my sons graduated from school, they decided to go to school out here in California. And I had always wanted to move to California because we vacationed here a lot. And I really just wanted to move, but they didn't until they graduated from high school because they wanted to stay in their own little circle. And so immediately once they graduated, they moved to California. And so at that point in time, I was at a stage of my life that I was prepared to move along with them.
How exciting, how exciting. Let's go back to that 5-mile description that you shared. It sounds really idyllic and beautiful. And as you were growing up, what was the elementary school you attended and junior high and high school?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yeah. So I went to a small school called Ewell Elementary School, which later then turned into an admin building for the school district as well. Went to the junior high school and the high school, and a couple memorable things there was I was able to go to a brand new high school, and we didn't even actually have a graduating class the first year, but it was actually named Eisenhower High School, and President Nixon at the time came out to dedicate the school, and I was one of the ones that sang in the choir for him.
Oh my goodness.
Back then it was a big deal.
Huge, absolutely. To have a president come out to a school.
To a school.
And how incredible.
Right.
That's really incredible.
That's really, and little did we know at that time he was in crisis. But, you know, as a 16-year-old, you really weren't aware of the current political affairs.
Absolutely. It's a big deal. It's definitely a big deal. And do you have siblings? Did you grow up with
I do.
siblings?
I have wonderful siblings. I have an older brother. I'm the baby of the family. I have one brother that lives in Arizona, and then the rest of my family lives back in Michigan. So I'm very close to my sister. And I had one other brother who passed away, so I have nieces and nephews, most of them being in Michigan, and one nephew here in California as well.
So you have reason to visit home?
Oh yes, absolutely. And most recently, it was really fun. Earlier this year, my sister was able to come on the chamber trip to Ireland with us.
Oh, fantastic.
How fun.
That's fantastic. And just in a few moments, we'll talk about some of the travel opportunities that the chamber provides. I can't wait to talk about that. So when you finished high school, did you go to college right away? Was it in Michigan? What were you planning on studying and doing?
Yes, so after high school, I went to community college. Macomb Community College, and then later on I actually went back to the leadership program at Macomb Community College. But I was really fortunate during that time I was in community college to have an opportunity to take some classes at a local hospital to become a unit secretary. And so I was able to attend like a 3-month program. You didn't know for sure if you were going to get a job or not, but I studied really hard and I came in top of the class, so I was able to secure a job. So then I worked at the hospital actually wound up working there for 10 years and then finished my degree at the community college.
Oh, fantastic. And so after that point, you found yourself at a point in time where you could come to California, be with your sons,
boys.
Yeah, your boys. And I know that you didn't start right away with the chamber in Carpinteria. In fact, you've had other positions with other chambers as well. So if you could talk about that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so back in Michigan, ironically enough that I'm here with you today, back in Michigan when my youngest son was just entering into junior high school and I had one in high school, I happened to do some fundraising for my son's friend's sick brother. And it came to the attention of the superintendent of the schools. I was able to raise like $50,000 in 3 months and really got this great team together. So it was really a team effort, but I led it and it came to the attention of the school superintendent. And so they honored me with a few awards and whatnot. And in our speaking, he asked me if I wanted to work at the Chamber of Commerce because they had a vacancy. Their executive director was ill and was going to be vacating the position. So I knew nothing about chambers, but he knew I knew how to fundraise.
Fundraise and make connections.
Right, and build a team.
And you had relationships and people trusted that what you were saying you were going to do with that money. So who knew back then?
It's funny how it all worked out. And so I worked at that chamber back in Romeo, Michigan, which was the city in which I was nearby. But I actually, in that chamber, it was called the Romeo Washington Chamber, I was covering 5 different communities, but remember these communities were quite rural, so even with 5 different townships, the total population was only 40,000. And I lived in the city, Washington Township, which encompassed 20,000. So it was a lot more rural than it is here, or even in my next chamber, when I moved to California, I secured a position at the Indio Chamber of Commerce, which obviously was a bigger chamber and, with a growing population of 87,000 people.
Wow.
So, and I know it's grown leaps and bounds even now since I've left.
So from Indio, did you find your way to Carpinteria?
Well, and I took a really long journey.
Did you?
Here, I did. So from Indio, I decided after 5 years to resign to travel Europe.
Wow.
To expand my wings. And so I left on a year-long journey, and I went and visited my good friend in Germany. We went to France, skiing in the Austrian Alps, to the south of Spain, and then I actually wound up studying in Prague.
And what did you study?
So I studied how to teach English as a second language. And I went there basically because I wanted to immerse myself in a different culture. I never had the opportunity. I got married rather young, so I never had that opportunity to really travel and explore not only other countries, but also myself.
Wow. So for a year, you just said, I'm closing up shop here. I'm assuming a couple bags and let's go.
So, about 7 bags, actually. more bags than I should have had.
We need all of those, right?
I did, and so then I came back to the desert where I was happily living. But then, it was unfortunately it was going to be time for me to go back to work. Luckily, with Chambers of Commerce, we have networks. And so there's different job boards. So technically you can almost choose wherever you would like to land. And ironically enough, I heard about an opening in Carpinteria and I applied, and I think 40 minutes later I was moving to Carpinteria when it was the only time I had ever been in Santa Barbara County was to interview.
Is that right? My goodness. I have a question about just yourself in Europe, because I can imagine that it changes you. Travel changes you, and then teaching and being in a different country and all of that. So I'm sure there are 20 lessons learned and many ways in which you changed, but is there something about that trip that really kind of clicked just had you turn a different corner about yourself?
Oh, thank you for asking. So one of the things, when we travel, when I had traveled to Europe before, I traveled maybe with my son, or I was meeting my good friend on the other side. But when I was on this journey by myself, And this is what I wanted.
Right.
But it was a little nerve-wracking, then I have to learn how to take all the public transportation,
Right.
which proved to be much more difficult than I thought, the public transportation, especially in Czech Republic, because the language is so much different and all of the cities sounded the same, so I got lost multiple times.
Yes.
And again, I went there to immerse myself in the culture. I came back saying, I'm pretty good here in the United States. Our systems are just a little bit easier, and it just felt more like home. And I missed the Diet Coke and the pizza and, some of those things. But I just felt like at that time I needed to get it out of my system.
So that it came at a perfect time, the Carpinteria position, because you were able to appreciate home and the beautiful valley of Carpinteria that it is and the community. And you showed yourself that you could do it.
I could do it.
Yeah,
I felt very independent.
Yes.
I felt very proud. I remember people saying to me, "Oh my goodness, you're so brave." And I'm like, "Oh no, that's nothing." But when I came back and I look back now, I'm like, yes, I was very brave.
It seems like that to me too. It sounds like a really incredible story of courage and independence and perseverance and coming home.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about home, Carpinteria. And before we go into the work of the chamber at Carpinteria specifically, I'd love for you, with your experience that you have, chambers of commerce very well. What does it serve? What's a chamber of commerce meant to serve in the community?
So I feel like the chamber position that I hold is being a cheerleader for the city. So we're there to just kind of make everyone feel welcome, provide advocacy with our local, state, regional leaders. So we provide a lot of just meet and greets and education. We also work hand in hand with the city for vitality and for working out issues that might come about with businesses versus city, kind of handhold our businesses through that project. And then we also just promote community unity, and especially in Carpinteria. Since this is my third chamber, it is interesting to compare this particular environment with just a population of about 14,000 in Carpinteria and about 20,000 in the greater Carpinteria Valley. It's a very close-knit community. And so it makes my job, it makes it so fun, and everything I feel like that we do really gets noticed and really appreciated.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for defining the role of what a chamber does. And let's talk about the specific Carpinteria chamber, of which you lead so well. You make it so visible, and you do exactly what you say is intended, which is make connections, make networks happen, but also inform and educate the community as well as business partners.
Right.
And so you've been with the chamber for, I think, 4 years.
Just over 4 years.
Just over 4 years. And it's evolved and evolving, and there's so many great events that you're doing and goals that you have. What are some of these new events or ongoing events that you really feel are making an impact in terms of the chamber and the community?
Well, thank you for asking. One of the events that we just did a few weeks ago at Pacifica Graduate Institute, we were able to bring in a legislator, Assemblymember Monique Lamone, as well as our mayor of the city of Carpinteria. But we were able to explore a new venue, which was Pacifica Graduate Institute. We were able to do a tour, find out more about it, and there were a lot of educators that, or different educational facilities that we invited to come to learn more about Pacifica. And it was really great, and we got so much wonderful feedback. And I know you yourself have had the honor of being a guest speaker when we did our Teacher of the Year breakfast a year and a half ago, celebrating a local Carpinteria teacher. So that's one of my favorite things. I love to bring people together, and especially for chambers, it's easy sometimes to serve our small businesses through our monthly mixers and different networking opportunities. But to get the larger companies to come out sometimes can be a bit challenging. And so the Legislative Breakfast is one of those events that we are able to bring out the larger businesses and have them connect with our local legislators or learn more about topics that are more important. And then also one of my favorite things, which we're in the midst of right now, is our Culinary Crawl. And that allows folks from all over to come and experience all of our different restaurants and cuisine that we have in Carpinteria. And it's a funny story how that came about. It was because we have a visitor center at our chamber office, and visitors would come in and we give them the menus and brochures and give them our recommendations, and they would always say, I wish I could try all of them in my short time here. And actually that's kind of what started the Culinary Crawl.
That's great. I love to hear the origin of that. And there's so many incredible restaurants that are put together by local individuals who have so much to offer.
Exactly.
Yes. And I understand too that you just completed a new, perhaps it's annual, maybe it's just a one-time thing, but it had to do with books. Literacy and books in the community. So say a little bit about that.
Oh, thank you for asking about that. Yes, we put on our Audacious Book Challenge, just a late night thought. I thought maybe we would get 500 books from our local community members that were looking to clean out their bookshelves and share their books. And we received over 13,000 books that we were able to distribute to Carpinteria Unified School District, the Friends of the Library, and their little free libraries. We have 4 little free libraries around Carpinteria, and also the Carpinteria Children's Project for their Friday night literacy nights.
Wow.
So we were able to distribute all those. It was way more than 500, and it was a lot of work, but it was a summer project, and it was an ambassador versus board members to see who could get the most books, and I'm proud to say that the ambassadors won.
Congratulations to the ambassadors, right? Well, what a great idea that you had. I mean, this is the brilliance of Joyce, I tell you. You have an idea and you put it to action, and it really is serving the community so well.
Exactly.
And so much of what you do and stand for is having fun and making really good interactions and connections, but there's also some serious work to happen and to do, and that we saw when the Thomas fire occurred and the debris flow. The city of Carpinteria was in such a unique geographic location, made the fire and the mud flows really isolated the city. And so it seemed to me, not living in Carpinteria, and I know that's where you reside, that your work and the work of your partners really served an incredible need, a very serious need. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, that was coming from Michigan and never having to deal really with a disaster, especially of this magnitude. So as you know, the fire started December 5th, they began in Ventura, quickly emerged into Carpinteria, and Carpinteria was on fire. And it was pretty devastating. So during that time, the community really rallied together. It was a little more difficult because the city of Carpinteria doesn't have like a IPO or public informational officer. So there was no communication. At that time, Carpinteria didn't have an online Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter. We do now, thank you. Just recently, 1 year ago, we did hire a company, and they're doing a great job. But during that time, there really was no one to reach out. And so I kind of had to take that role on. So that was during the fires. Now, obviously not much longer away, the floods came, and we were virtually isolated. We had no internet, we had no TV, part of us didn't have electricity and power, and it was really devastating. Luckily for me, I had an assistant that was my virtual assistant that lived in San Diego. So she was able to pump the information out through our social media, through our website, and that was really life-saving because she was able to get the information down in San Diego and then pump that out to the people that were able to get their information off of social media. But there was a lot of community gatherings, both with the city. We helped coordinate a lot of large-scale informational meetings, and then also for the business owners to teach them about the continuity planning and whatnot. And we actually have another one of those coming up in September for National Safety Month, or Preparedness Month. So it was really devastating, but what really the good part that came out of that was that it really pulled the community together even more. and people really helped each other. It was just amazing, and especially with Carpinteria Children's Project, we're able to arrange for food and care and all kinds of support for the students and the parents, and that was really heartwarming. They did an amazing job. And the school, the high school, was the venue of many of our informational meetings as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Really, it's wanted to hear about that, and also to thank you for serving such an incredible need. And it sounds like you were really there for the community. And there were so many incredible, important lessons learned upon which now things are changing.
Exactly.
Yeah, and readying for future needs, whatever they may be.
I think with the city, I was at City Council last night, and as they move forward, they're always thinking about that preparedness and how can we do better. And, you know, these are the plans that we now have in place, but we didn't have in place back in 2017.
Right. So let's talk again about the town of Carpinteria. You reside there. What are some of the best parts of Carpinteria?
So I love the fact that you can walk down the street and everyone knows your name. You know, wherever you go, dinner, the grocery store, the library, or just walking down the street, you know, everybody kind of knows each other. But one really special thing about Carpinteria is even if you weren't born and raised there, people just embrace you. And that happened to me, but I can also see it happening all the time. So everybody really, they really care, like sincerely care about the other folks that live there. And especially when it comes to education, as you know, that's a huge passion for many of the residents there. And so they're very giving. They give a lot of money, they share their time, talents, and resources to assist with the students and their parents.
It seems like a very magical place, a really wonderful place to live and to bring up children and have schools and have community partners for sure.
It definitely is.
So we're very fortunate that you are leading a charge there, but also that you could share from the inside out what it really is like to be there. So earlier in this program, we talked about your sister traveling with you a couple years ago, and the Chamber does arrange travel opportunities. So what's coming up?
So we arranged travel trips because it is a fundraiser. I'll just start with that because we do it for fun, but it's also a fundraiser for the Chamber. So this year we'll have had a net of 66 travelers that just most recently went to Ireland, and then in a few months we'll be going to Spain and Portugal. And actually this evening we are actually having our trip preview for Switzerland in 2020 in the spring. What is so wonderful about this program is that I've met so many great friends. We have lots of family reunions, parties, and it's just such a great group of people that travel. And then we have people from all over too that join us for the travel. I think we have quite the reputation now. I think it's a good reputation.
A great reputation, that's for sure. And earlier also in our program, you mentioned a leadership program that you had attended in Michigan, but you've attended other leadership programs as well. Can you say a few of them and maybe what you've learned from some?
Wonderful. So back in Michigan, I think I mentioned that I went back to my community college for a leadership program. And then when I went to India, they had a great leadership program as well. Kind of follows the 10-month, specific programs. Most programs are developed with the same goals and aspirations for the students. So I was able to graduate from Leadership Macomb and then Leadership Coachella Valley. But some of my favorite things that I was able to do while I was back in the Coachella Valley was attend the Institute of Organizational Management, which is a 4-year program for chamber execs and nonprofit managers through the U.S. Chamber Institute of Organizational Management. And so I'm proud to wear those initials after my name. And that was at Loyola Marymount. It was a 4-year program. And prior to that, I was able to go to a 3-year program with the Western Association of Chamber Executives, and that is through the Cal Chamber. So I've always continued my education. I always felt that that was very important as a leader in the community. I want to be certain that I'm up on the most current trends and know exactly what's going on in my field to be the best leader that I can.
I think that's fascinating because some people might not know that these programs actually exist specifically for chamber leaders or nonprofit leaders and others. And it is such an important gap that you fill or need that you address. And the leadership aspect is really an important one. We sort of joked about you had an idea and you kind of implemented the idea. That happens, but a lot of what you're doing is very intentional. It's not haphazard. It's very focused and driven and really wanting to push and move the city forward. So I really appreciate that you can talk about that leadership, the schooling and education that you've had.
One more thing I just wanted to mention. At my last chamber, I was able to bring that chamber up to one of the top chambers in the nation through U.S. Chamber accreditation. That also was a long program, all self-induced. They have 8 key core values that you have to accomplish. So it took me about 2.5 years to develop the programming, to develop the programs and then implement them and then to study them and then to be able to create the application. It was about 2.5 years. I flew to Washington, D.C. and personally delivered it, and we were awarded with 4-star accreditation.
Wow.
Where there was only 137 chambers that were accredited out of 7,000 chambers in the United States. So between that and fast tracking through my 7 years of school in 4 years and getting that accreditation, I think that's when I kind of decided I'm ready for a rest, and that's when I went to Europe.
That makes perfect sense. But congratulations, that's really
That's a big deal. And the great thing about that was I'm able to bring all of that experience here to Carpinteria, and my local residents didn't have to pay for any of that education or applications and whatnot.
I want to ask a really quick question, which is something that you mentioned early at the beginning of the interview, and you said you came out, your sons were ready to come out to California for school, and they're in the film industry. So let's say a bit about each one.
Oh, thank you so much. So I have, my oldest son is Brian, and he's actually a music composer. And so he loved music ever since he was 5 years old. And since I bought like a keyboard at the neighbor's garage sale, he started pounding on it. He's had a music label called Clearside since he's been 15.
Wow.
And then he actually went to Tempe, Arizona to a music conservatory for recording arts and sciences, and then came to California. So he was there for about 1 year, then came to California to intern, and then actually wound up working on the set of How I Met Your Mother, which is how he met his wife.
Oh, I love that.
And so his wife, Missy, is a movie producer, and she's very successful. My younger son is a film editor. He's a specialized type of film editor called a flame editor, and he works for one of the top houses in the country, in LA. So they're both doing tremendously well, but definitely they have a lot of creative genes in them. And one just quick story, while I was working at the chamber back in Michigan, we worked very closely with our local cable station. And so Zachary, at like 16, interned for the local cable station, and they actually gave him a small but significant, or small, but it meant a lot to him to further his education, and he went to LA Film School.
Wow. Well, lucky for us, they came to California, and then you followed, because we benefit from all three of you in terms of the impact across California for sure, and in Carpinteria. We really do appreciate all that you shared today, all of the work that you do in the town of Carpinteria, and we see it. We can feel it and see it, and it really makes a difference. So, Joyce, I just wanted to say thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools. Thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of Schools of Thought.